Ending this year with another amazing chapter, yet I gotta say a very confusing one. Took me a while to get a grasp on the context of what's really happening, but overall a really good chapter. So let's just get right to the chase. The cover this time shows Saitama wearing Santa Claus clothes, wishing everybody a happy Christmas. This chapter picks up where we left off last time, with Void meeting Luna and Stain, who are obviously just God trying to manipulate Void. They told him that now they have an honorable mission they need to fulfill, and Void questions what they really mean by that. Stain and Luna starts to explain that the shinobi world is filled with destruction, pain, and conflict, and their mission now is to try to eliminate all of mankind's consciousness and merging them to become one. I gotta say that this should have sounded awfully familiar to a lot of people. Spoiler alerts for those who didn't really watch Naruto, this is a clear copy of Obito and Madara's plan, which is Project Tsukuyomi, where they try to put everybody in a genjutsu, merging all of their consciousness into one and living in a dream world forever. Except here, it's obviously not the case, since God is just trying to assumably control everybody. Void at first questions the idea, but eventually gets persuaded, hence that's how he got manipulated in the first place. Next panel cuts to the present events just after both Blast and Void bodies separated from the merge. Blast is surprised at the effect of teleporting and trying to fuse, resulting in them sharing memories with each other. But he was able to see all of what we witnessed in the previous chapter and partially in this one, and Void was able to see that Blast knew about his and Maya's plot all along. We didn't really see any visuals from his point of view, but we know that after he confirms the fact when he tried to attack Blast with a kick. Guys, look, my translation, as I stated before, is pretty shaky, and in this part in particular, I tried to understand on my own so bad, but I just couldn't. Basically, what I got from this is that Blast saw through both Void and Luna's plot. Since he likes strong people, he tends to be more cautious about them, but eventually they didn't pose any type of problems to him with any of their tricks. But more importantly, guys, Blast seems like he fused his arm back, I'm guessing with using his teleportation portals as he did before. And to this point I have no problem, since we can say that this happened off screen. But why does Void have his two swords with him when 2 chapters ago they were stolen by Saitama? So it's either a drawing error that Murata forgot about, or Void can simply regrow his swords as he pleases. But if it's the latter, it still doesn't make sense, since he isn't really using them in this fight. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But nonetheless, Void hits this crazy pose and envelops himself in some kind of aura, attempting to try to attack Blast. This seems awfully similar to Saitama vs Boros in the anime, specifically in episode 11, where Boros' armor broke and tried to attack Saitama. It's the same aura, the same angle, and the same poses. Void attacks Blast in super speed, and the latter started tanking them with no problem. Alright, so this is where the confusion starts. The narrator clearly states that Void had a secret, and it flashes back to when he absorbed Cosmic Fear Garu's divine powers in chapter 197, and somehow after that incident, despite Void still appearing as a monster, the manipulation of God faded away and he regained his sense of self, all thanks to absorbing Garu's dark nature factor. He then made a huge decision. He pretended that he is still manipulated by God and that he wants to defeat the heroes, but in fact, he only wants to collect more agents and avatars to after sacrifice himself to share the power he collected from Garu to all of these avatars, rendering them to also regain their sense of selves to ultimately attack and defy God. This chapter ends with the narrator saying that this was his plan all along. Now, is this happening in the present or it happened before? Because it seems that Void fully sacrificed himself and started disintegrating, hence he is dying. If that's true, then that makes sense for some parts and not so much for others. Remember in chapter 200, he wasn't actually attacking Sonic and Flash to kill them, but was just trying to manipulate them with the cube. So maybe he wanted them to join his army to eventually destroy God. He also didn't want to decapitate and kill Blast. However, we clearly has seen him use the dimensional slash against Sonic and Flash, which means that he really wanted to kill them. He also used that later in chapter 208 against Blast, only to be stopped by Saitama. The only valid explanation is that Void was still conflicted about his plan and his manipulation didn't wear off completely. Also, the fact that Void has his swords when he sacrificed himself made people believe that this is still a flashback. But if he already done this against God, why is he serving him again? It's just confusing for a lot of people right now. My overall thoughts is that this happened in the present and Void is actually dead. The swords are just a drawing error. But it's still very vague even when the English translation is out. A lot of people are speculating that a redraw is in motion, but I don't really know, to be honest, but nonetheless, I really think that Void's plan was really good. I'd imagine that all of these avatars would be wiped out easily by God, but it's a pretty solid plan. It's also really cool to see God again in this chapter, especially in this amazing panel. Overall, this chapter is pretty solid and looking forward to the next one. Take care.